Walk with me through the cellar door. A storm is coming, Frances. A portal to a more skeptical world.
Cellar Door Skeptics begins right now. Prepare for the revolution with your hosts, Christopher Tanner and Chris Hanna.
Oh, welcome to Cellar Door Skeptics. Thank you all so much for joining us tonight. We have an amazing show packed out for you. Tonight it's going to be kind of another passion show, right? You know, it's one of those things where there's a topic that's burning my mind. And no, it's not politics, folks, this time. Which is a first. Usually it's politics. But this time it is not. And so I have a personal situation that we'll get into in a little bit where I want to talk through healthcare again, right? But on a different aspect that looks at alcoholism and rehab treatments. Because I think right now, as we sit here and get into some of the final debates for the Democratic nominees before Super Tuesday, the big conversation that comes up, right, is where does everybody stand? So I want to get into a little bit of that aspect of the healthcare plans, how some of the candidates stand, and let's compare it to our friendly friends in the North. And speaking of friendly friends in the North, please welcome our co-hosts, Mr. Hansel and Buddy the Elf, or Buddy the Lumberjack, excuse me.
Buddy's the elf. It's no longer Christmas time, yeah.
If Buddy the
how are
Elf
you
is
all
showing
doing?
up, is he bringing Zoe Deschanel with him?
I don't know.
Gotta
Can we
change-
not
that
talk
would
about that
change-
movie? You know,
that
I've
would-
forgotten about that movie, and I spend like 11 and a half months of the year blissfully unaware that it exists, and then every year it comes back, and I wish it wouldn't.
Yeah, I don't know. It's one of my wife's favorite Christmas books or movies, and as far as Christmas movies are concerned, I don't mind it too much.
I
But-
just I can't get behind Will Ferrell in that. He's just too much. It's just like most things he does. It's just way too much. And for somebody like me who has a bad habit of living up to being quote unquote too much, I can't. I'm just like, no, dude, stop, please. The screaming and the noise and the glaive, stop.
What is it? The maple syrup in your spaghetti? Is that what it is?
Don't you dare shit talk my dessert.
Hold on. Do you put maple syrup in your spaghetti? I just have to know. Like,
I
is
mean,
this a
I can't
thing?
say that I have, but I've come to realize that what I know about Canada is limited to my local area. So this is kind of a journey for me. I don't know. Is maple syrup on spaghetti a thing? Hang on. Let me just Google this.
Only in
All
the
right.
movie. that
You
I know
Google
of.
it because I could tell you.
Yeah, it is. It's a thing.
Oh, okay. That's crazy. I did not know that. But, you know, it's funny because we were at our friend's house, not last weekend, but the weekend before, doing like a post-Christmas party because they were sick over Christmas. So we're like, don't spread the wealth. And we just like, we'll postpone it till everybody feels better.
We'll
and then
postpone it until the coronavirus is pending around the corner.
yeah, that's coming too. But the difference though is that we when we were doing it, we had spaghetti for dinner because that's what a lot of the kids like, right? So it's easy. They already had all the ingredients. They're like, you don't have to buy anything, Chris, but fruit. And so then my daughter accidentally dropped a piece of banana in her spaghetti, and she's like, "Oh, I'm not going to eat that." And my buddy goes, "I don't know, that doesn't sound that bad." And I was like, "All right, eat it. Eat a banana in your spaghetti. Do it." Like, because I can't imagine it's going to taste good. Like, I can't imagine bananas and spaghetti. So I have a video of him that I will not release. And I won't release his name or anything. I promise him not to.
Yet.
But no, I won't. I won't do it. But it was just funny because he ate it and he's like, yeah, it's just like weird mushiness added to the spaghetti. Like the sauce and the noodles just overtake it. It doesn't matter. Like it's just nothing. So
Yeah. I don't know. Every once in a while, something strange will go through with people adding sweets and stuff. My father, one of the best ones he ever did was we were at breakfast joint with baseball coach and all this stuff. He grabbed the syrup and he starts pouring it on his pancakes. and he's looking at it. And it's like it's not coming out fast enough. He's like, this syrup is just like really slow. He dumped like an unnatural amount of honey on his pancakes, just
Ugh.
like a ton of it. He was like eating candy. He had so much sugar on these pancakes, and that's just like every once in a while. Like, but like the best apple pie I've ever had in my life. My grandmother made a mistake on. She accidentally used cayenne pepper instead of cinnamon. And
I would like that.
What she did was she was like, "Oh no!" and she rinsed the apples off, but there was no way you could get it all completely off. And so she put the regular seasonings in, and it was an apple pie with just like in the background, just a little of spice, where it was like, what is that little tiny bit? And anytime I make an apple pie now, I put a quarter of a teaspoon of cayenne pepper in, and it's always just like little tiny difference, that because everybody has the cinnamon and brown sugar and everything, but nobody has a little spice on there. So that's like my secret. So cooking secrets tonight on Cellar Door Skeptic.
And we did that before, way back when we first started the show. Well, and that's like in Texas, I went to this restaurant that supposedly is the best fried chicken ever, right? And they have like these two syrup bottles on the table, and one looks like maple syrup and the other one looks like honey. And so I kind of opened it and I was like, maple syrup for biscuits at a fried chicken place? I was like, okay, I guess I get the waffles and chicken and waffles. I get that. They don't serve that there though, by the way. They don't serve that there. We'll get to what they serve in a second. It was molasses. People put molasses, I guess, on biscuits.
Oh, that's
didn't know
bitter.
that.
Sweet sassy molassy.
Yep.
That's
and,
bitter.
And the
man.
lady
That's
goes,
intense.
you either like it or you don't.
That's how Texas is.
No kidding.
We'll kill you or we won't.
Well, and that's the horrible thing about this restaurant. So I go to this restaurant, right, because they had the best fried chicken, and it was recommended by somebody in the local board game group that I hang out with when I go down there once in a while.
The best fried chicken?
It was pretty good. I'll be honest, it was pretty good. This is how he says it. He goes, all right, you're gonna go there. They're gonna basically give you a half of a fried chicken if you order that, or you can get 10 chicken strips, or you can get 2 chicken fried steaks, or whatever, and it's all the same price. You just pick whatever type you want, and then you get unlimited sides.
Steak.
Chicken fried steak, yeah,
Or country fried steak.
Country fried steak. Sorry,
I was like chicken fried steak. That's insane.
That would be cool.
We're blending species. No,
we'll just blend it all up into like little. Anyway, we're gonna keep moving.
A gray nugget.
Yeah. So that's already McDonald's. So the difference though is that when you take this, right, and you take it and they give you this half fried chicken and they bring out all the sides. It's all unlimited sides, and they bring me out a salad, right, and I was like, there's nothing on this salad. It's just lettuce. It's like.
Put some chicken on it.
Is there anything to go on this? And can I get some dressing for it? She's like, oh, it's already got Italian dressing on it. And I pick a piece of the lettuce up, and the dressing just like oozes off. It's like, oh man, this is not salad. This is Italian dressing. That's what this is.
It's how they differentiate the tourist from the locals. Like, you want a salad? We're gonna put some nasty Italian dressing.
Let me
on
put
here.
the core of the
Just put
lettuce and
bowl.
olives in here.
And they just bring the same one out. They throw a couple more in from the last people, and then they bring it back. And
they probably do. And the best part is it's unlimited sides, and they make it known. And then they tell you can't take the sides home, but you get unlimited of them. Then they bring you, get this, they bring you mashed potatoes, like some sort of a mushroom gravy, that actually was really good. I'll be honest, the mushroom gravy was really good.
You know how to make mushroom gravy? It can be really good.
Yeah, it was really good. Like yes, 100% off the charts. Great. They gave you some type of green beans, which are 100% unhealthy. A form of cream corn, biscuits. All you can eat biscuits. I mean, these are all your sides plus a half a fried chicken for $18. And I'm sitting here at the table by myself, kind of looking around, going, "Y'all know it's just me, right? Y'all know I ain't gonna eat all this. Like, I'm not gonna eat all this." And they
just put a Meyer plastic bag in like your satchel.
Well, I thought about that. And so I asked for a to-go box, and they're like, "We don't have to-go boxes here." And I was like, "What?" They go, "We got to-go bags."
Put it in my hands and walk out with just a handful of.
Well, they give you these plastic bags that are see-through, so you can't put the other stuff in it to take it home. They're like, we used to have
gonna...
styrofoam, but people used to take all the sides home, so we do this now. Do you really want to put your sides in a plastic bag? And I'm sitting here going, well, that mushroom gravy was pretty good. I actually kind of do want to just dump that in the bottom just for the chicken. I'll tear the chicken off the bone and throw it in the mushroom gravy.
Like, if you think about it, like, they're going to nitpick about people taking the sides home. You have an unlimited thing. Like, how much food do you throw away at the end of the day? Is it really like that? Is that the business, the business plan that you set out? Like, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's just
See last week's conversation about food waste.
Yeah, exactly. It was really hard to eat there because I thought we would get set at a community table where we could share things, right? No. You get all the sides yourself and as much as you want with them. So I finished my Korean corn and she brought me another dish. I'm like, hey, can you just take that away? I'm like, I'm not going to eat that. Like, I mean, they weren't like huge bowls. Like, it wasn't like a bowl, but it's a small bowl, like enough for like a one serving for me. So I ate the corn because the corn was really good. And I ate the mushroom gravy and I ate the salad, a little bit of the salad because it's the only semi-healthy thing in that physical restaurant. But the best, they don't serve alcohol. And so, like, I asked them, I was like, there's no alcohol here? And she's like, no, you didn't know this is BYOB. And I'm like, what? They're like, yeah, you just bring your own. You just got to be 25, but you bring your own.
This restaurant sounds like Yosemite Sam made it.
Well, and the best part is I'm walking out to pay, right? And I'm walking out to the front to pay. And I didn't really believe you could bring your own alcohol. I honestly did not. And at this table, there's, I don't know, like 20 people and 3 boxes of wine on the table. And I'm just sitting, they're pouring it into the glasses. They're just drinking it. And
that's like, doing it right.
All right. I guess I believe they have BYOB now. Like, if I ever come back here again, I will just know I can bring my whiskey and set it right on the table. And what are they going to say? Crazy. It's crazy.
Talk about channeling the spirit of Walmart.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Oh. We'll put it this way.
You can eat sides and all the wine you can carry.
I'm not opposed to that.
Well, that's what this guy sold me on. He's like, they let you take, as long as you don't get a second set of sides, they'll let you take the sides home. So I was like, sweet, $18, 2 meals, maybe even 3 meals out of this. Can't pass it up, right? That's super cheap. If I can eat in Texas for 3 meals for $18, I'm all in.
Yeah.
Not that I'm going to let my company save the money. I'm just going to spend it on toys to take home with me or booze. But at the same time, at least I can eat that. And then there was enough chicken for 2 to 3 meals. 100%, like, no questions asked. Easy. But you couldn't take any of the sides home. So it's like, who wants to eat just fried chicken by itself? It's like, So when I got back to the hotel, I was like, hey, I got a quarter of a fried chicken. You all want it? You can have it. And I just gave it to the people at the front desk. I was like, here you go. Merry Christmas. Like, I'm never going to eat this. It's unhealthy anyway. So
welcome to the 21st century food addiction breakdown. We're going to,
and that's almost what it feels like, right? Like, it does feel like addiction to some extent, especially in Texas, because like people are like, you should live here. I was like, why? Well, everything's bigger in Texas. I was like, yeah, but I can't eat the meals here because they're all fatty. Getting something somewhat healthy here is like pulling teeth. Oh, and on top of that, everything has like sugar in it. Like you're just eating pounds of sugar in this place. Like you have to like go to a place and be like, can you tell me how much carbs and sugars are in this thing, please? And I get it's an irony because I drink, whiskey and that has nothing but carbs and sugar. But the exchange is I'll eat 2-3 salads a day and green beans and that and a little bit of protein and less carbs to be able to drink, if that's what I can do.
It's like when I've been to places like Roost Chris and everything, like high quality food and like oh cool, we'll get the Brussels sprouts. The last time I had Brussels sprouts at Roost Chris in Grand Rapids, like this, I guarantee you the small side had to have been 2,000 calories. It was like just soaked in bacon grease. It was the like greasy, it was delicious. There's sugar and grease in there. It was sweet and it was roasted and it was bacon. And I'm assuming that is just essentially the I guess business plan for every restaurant in Texas.
That's probably what it feels like. And then you kind of think, I think back to that Letterkenny show and they always reference Texas. And then I kind of wonder, is Canada just the same way? Do they just have different types of food, but offer you overly large quantities at unhealthy rates?
You'd be amazed. No, not overly. We do have all you can eat, but nothing quite like Texas. It's just the Texas size 10-4 because, everything's bigger in Texas, even their 10-4.
Fair enough.
I'm not apologizing for that, by the way.
You might have to. You might have to, actually. I'm now getting yelled at in my house for using letter cleaning codes, just so you know. Like, I get yelled at. I'll be like, I'll be walking in there, I'll be like, pitter patter, come on. And
hang on,
like,
let me pull my hood over so I can be more like a Sith. Good. That didn't work.
Your voice didn't work either, my friend.
Yeah, well, I was trying not to bang into the mic because you yell at me for that.
I do. It drives me nuts. Anyway.
I used to edit a show. I understand.
Back to today's show. So
today's Ramblecast has been brought to you by All You Can Eat Buffets.
So we were going to start out with some politics, but I guess since Hannah brought it up, we'll just get into the reason I wanted to talk about healthcare in the system right now. And so all the names will be changed. None of them are the actual legit names, but this weekend I spent a day, my one night off, what I should be spending with my family, helping a friend. And I got a call about 8:00 at night. A friend, was basically trying to commit suicide. Is the long and short of it. Right. And so me and another buddy rushed over there. We encouraged them to call the cops. They called the cops, right? Cops get there before we do. Everybody. He didn't do it. If he did make an attempt, it was a very, feeble attempt, but he was wasted. And we're not talking a little wasted. So Hannah, I don't know, what's the most drunk you've ever been? Have you ever actually blew into a breathalyzer or anything like that?
I was too drunk to figure out how to blow into the breathalyzer in college.
All right.
And I got an MIP. They just wrote up and they were like, he blew a .06. And the guy's like, how did you get in that much trouble? I was like, I got nothing. Total blackout. So I've had those moments when I was younger and everybody's, party with friends or something like that. And then get a little bit. It's like a lot of days now, when you get older, or when you're younger, you'll either do hard spirits because you don't like the taste of beer, or you'll like beer and things like that. So you can drink Bud Light, you can drink that all night long because it's only 3.7%. You just get full a lot of times before you get blown out. If you drink stronger stuff or harder stuff, like the new beers that's popular just about everywhere now, all the craft brews and stuff are much higher alcohol content. It just sneaks up on you. You get 3, 4 of those in you. And you're like, oh, cool, yeah, I'm kind of full, and then all of a sudden, it just turns on, and you're like, you're done. And so those kinds of things. But I've had my moments in history. I woke up in a hospital once. I'm not sure if I got hit by a car or what, but we were no, seriously, we were at a reggae show downtown Detroit, and I went out to the parking lot to just go out because the show was either closing up or finishing up or something. And I just went out to the car and then just nothing. And the whole side of my body was all bruised up, but I just woke up in the ER. And so I'm not sure if that's, I'm almost certain I had a concussion on that one, but I don't know. I've had my share of in boozing and what do they call it? Time traveling. So you wake up and you travel through time.
Well,
I've heard that joke before.
Yeah, like time traveling or something.
David Tell, isn't it?
Yeah, that
time traveled,
right?
So when we get there, though, they essentially take him to the hospital. They got to put him on watch, right? Because the cops were called. So we go to the hospital. Mm-hmm. They let us in. He's wasted, easily wasted. And we were talking to the nurse. Guess what his alcohol blood content level was?
0.2 something.
Higher.
We really got over 3?
0.331.
Woo! That's cooking.
Wow.
Yeah. 0.4 is supposedly registered death.
I can't remember what it was. I saw there were a few people that were this one guy was just ripped in Europe somewhere, and they did a BAC on him. He was over 4. Some humans are just weird
built to do it. Yep,
but
and that's fine. Anyway, so
we were really high.
We were talking and having a conversation, and what comes out of it is the fact that the healthcare system has essentially failed him. He openly admits that he has addiction issues. That this is not something that he's proud of, and this and that. And wants to go through rehab, but he can't ever make the stints in rehab because of the withdrawals and all the other things, right?
Yeah.
And they came in and they asked him if he had insurance, and it's like, well, I don't know, I think I do. Well, you would know if you did. And so, like, we all know he doesn't. And they ask, are you, where are you employed at? And he's like, well, I'm currently between jobs. He actually just lost his job the other week. And, so he's currently between jobs. And they're like, okay, you don't have insurance then, but we'll look it up, blah, blah, blah. So they go through this whole rigmarole. And they're offering him all this free counseling type stuff and free rehab stuff. But you still got your hospital bill, your ambulance bill, all these other things. And when we sit down to it, all of those stemmed because of an addiction issue, right? And it's a disease. He has a disease that he's not been able to kick. And, it doesn't help that our friend killed himself, 3 weeks ago, and that we were all really close with. So that's still a big thing. And when you have that happen, then you lose your job. You've had alcohol issues in the past. Here it rears its ugly head again, right? And I would say if this is a consistent thing that you're at 0.331, and when we finally get you out of the hospital 3 hours later, you want us to take you to the bar or to get beer, we probably have a problem, because I don't understand how you can consume anymore at that point. Like, to me, I would just be on the ground, I guess. Like, I don't think I would be conscious at that level, but that's just me. And anyway, so long story short, that got me to thinking of, well, what do the European countries do? Like, we want to sit here right now and talk about American healthcare. And we have how many candidates out there that are working to try and get us universal health care. And then we have some candidates that we'll talk about later that have dropped out of the race to support Biden, who is not openly working towards healthcare for all and wants to stick by the ACA, which, by the way, is now they're now working to try and repeal the ACA anyway. This now came up this morning as well. So it's all these things that come in together, and we sit there and go, okay, where do the candidates stand? How can we make America better? And is there any other models? So the first thing I wanted to get into, since we had a Canadian resident on the show, was what are some of the different laws, the different things that have come out, and how does addiction treatment work in Canada?
Well, addictions, of course, it had typically addictions end up being recognized for how they impact your day-to-day life. So a lot of times addictions end up arising in custody battles, things like that. I don't have the exact numbers on me, but that's kind of a small sample from my experience working at a gym that was right next door to an addiction recovery center, of all places. Getting to know those guys, it was an interesting journey that I went on. But in Canada, typically for addictions, you can check yourself in because it's part of our publicly available healthcare system. Now, yes, again, as I said, there are different ways where you'll get recommended. If there's domestic abuse involved, if there are kids involved and there's suspected abuse of substances involved, they will recommend you for counseling, addiction services, what have you. Again, Canada, by having the private public healthcare system, we have publicly available options. I did mention this, and I did provide some links to it. Except my links just don't want to work for me right now.
Which one do you want me to bring up? I'll bring it up on the screen.
I brought up so I'm following my provinces, because as per last week when I was talking about, was it last week that I was talking about public healthcare? I hope it was last week. I'm sticking with that. So when I was talking about it, each province does have their own approach to what's publicly available, what they fund, what they don't fund, et cetera, et cetera. Mental health services tend to be the first to get the big ugly axe because it's an unseen illness. More on that another day. So on this, so those of you who are following along or watching the video currently, you can see that we're on Alberta Health Services website. So that's my province, Alberta, talking about adult addiction services. So it's a non-medical treatment facility for those experiencing problems related to drugs, alcohol, gambling, sex addiction, because apparently people still think that's a thing. And they're also for, support systems. So friends, family, anybody who basically is involved with somebody who might be, going through an addiction. So there's drop-in intake, and I'm just reading from the list here. Drop-in intake, short-term, as well as outpatient counseling. There's education, skill, and support group programs. a 4-week intensive day treatment program for those committed to abstinence, and next business day access to programs following intake. All programs and services are voluntary, confidential, and free of charge. So again, public health care is kind of a good thing because, hey, you can just go get this instead of having to sit there and try to, tough it out or pull yourself up by your bootstraps as you're drinking yourself into oblivion. So the Alberta government is currently doing things that I don't fully understand with regard to the website, so it's a little bit limited on this page. So what you do have is so the access. So they talk about the service providers as well as the eligibility. Now, for service providers, this may include addictions counselors, mental health clinicians, as well as social workers. Now, in Canada, what is covered by our public healthcare system, and I actually found this out while I was doing my degree program at my university, is I have a degree in psychology, is there's a difference between what we define legally as a psychologist and a psychiatrist. Psychiatrist is covered under public health care because they are legally considered a doctor, whereas a psychologist is not legally considered a doctor because they don't go to med school. Therefore, their services aren't covered under public health care and typically get covered under private insurance that's offered. Fun fact. And the eligibility for anybody is basically, again, because they say it's voluntary, anybody who's over the age of 18. Now, I don't know why they only show one service location in Calgary. There's got to be one.
Too small, I think. Isn't that how that works?
Alberta literally doesn't have more than 4 million people in it. And more than half of those people are in Calgary and Edmonton alone. And those are the two main biggest cities. Then we got Medicine Hat, Lethbridge, but that's a whole other tangent. So again, there are publicly available options. Now these are, I think in general, these are kind of seen more as what I was referring to last time I talked about healthcare as preventative measures, where, if suddenly you're starting to notice that it's affecting it, maybe you haven't quite hit rock bottom, which the ideal is to not hit rock bottom. So if there's a suspicion of, abuse, whatever, you can start getting help right away, as opposed to waiting until, you might be dying or,
losing your job,
losing everything.
Your liver fails, or
exactly that type of thing.
Or you have a heart attack.
Or any other negative connotations. Now, one of the other links that I provided, and I only provided it because I did look at it, is drugrehab.ca. That seems to be kind of an overarching site for Canada. Good, you got it pulled up there. Now, I did look over what they talked about in Alberta, and my only critique of this one, because they do offer a 1-800 number for those who are looking for treatment, friends, family, etc. My critique of this one is just that they do seem to have a larger favor for private drug rehabilitation, and they cite things like longer wait lists in government programs and government funded treatments, which can be problematic as you or a loved one may run the risk of changing their minds about treatment if they are not checked into right away, which, while I do think is something that's important to look at, I do kind of recognize that as a FOMO tactic or FOMO sales tactic. And I strongly disagree with that, because that's very much a free market exploiting somebody's need thing for personal profit, which I, again, totally disagree with when it comes to something like this, especially now that we've reelected a conservative government that has taken steps to kind of make it look like our public healthcare system isn't doing so great by not increasing funding and making it, which appears to be a step towards trying to, endear the public to a private system.
They've been trying to do that to the Affordable Care Act ever since it existed. So it's basically starve it and then say, look, it's not working very good. Well, you didn't put any money into it. I mean, it's
right there.
It's something that it's part of the strategy of politics, and it's an interesting one, because when you think about the people that are running these campaigns and doing everything like this, like, they're taking away what could be a safety net, the entire perspective of giving people a safety net so that they don't have permanent, absolutely debilitating bills or
Right.
or they pass away or whatever. But like,
Or they don't ruin their life.
Everything about it is giving someone like a safety net. And so there's a safety net here, and there are people who, for whatever their reasons, they honestly do think that the private sector serves the people better, and so their solution is to play with the lives of the people who could benefit from these programs, and to try to just change the market system itself to drive it so that these people have to go to private, and that it becomes healthcare becomes for profit. I get it. Like, if the end goal you think is this utopia of capitalism or private healthcare, but it's weird that you're okay with like crushing people on the way to get to that utopian goal, because that's kind of what has to happen. You have to destroy the economy that currently exists and to move it into the one that you want. And by doing that, you're simply just playing with the lives of people. And I mean, all politics, I guess, at the national scale is like that, but it just seems like it's kind of, heartless and cold for people who are usually pro-life and a lot of those kinds of things. And like, so this is really nice to see that you guys have, in Alberta, you've got a lot of there is some diversity in what they have here, but they do cover the basics, but they give you something. Chris was just talking about his friend, the ambulance ride, please care, all that kind of stuff. You get a bill for that. So I mentioned just randomly, I mentioned earlier that I woke up in a hospital. I had an ambulance ride. I had an $800 bill when I was in college. I didn't make any money. I just $850 bill just showed up. And it's like, those kinds of things. If I wasn't, let's face it, I've said this multiple times on the show, I am middle class and fairly affluent from my entire upbringing. Like, I didn't have to worry about money really at any point. There were a few times when my father's company was struggling, but I don't ever remember having want for anything. And so like an $800 bill didn't destroy me. But there was a study that came out a couple of years ago that basically said that something like 50% of the people in the United States couldn't cover a $400 emergency bill if they got one. And
absolutely.
And I would assume that there's probably that level of poverty, income inequality in Canada, where some of these people who don't have access to some of these public things, if they went or there was an emergency, they would be probably in some serious financial trouble. And it's like having this small safety net, it really is a big deal. And so like, and people, there's a stigma attached to, addiction. And so like people like to try to keep it hidden away. And it's same with mental health. They'd like to try to keep it like, we know this exists, but we're just going to try to hide it. We don't want to be bothered by it. And that's kind of how I feel a lot of people like to deal with these types of things. Like they're not comfortable talking about it for reasons I don't understand. I'm just a talky person, but you know what I mean? Like, just like some people are uncomfortable talking about this kind of stuff, and it hides in society. And then the only time that you do talk about it is when it's a serious issue. Chris's friend, and like it gets to be so bad that you can no longer ignore it. It literally becomes a life or death situation. So I like what Canada has here. It kind of scares me that you're saying that they're using some of the tactics they're learning from us in ways to kind of starve the system that you have. But this is pretty cool.
Yeah. On that last note there, it's quite horrifying to see that there are some serious slashes being made, and of course, then you got the rampant followers who are drinking the pablum like it's the sustenance that they need to survive. Going, see, it doesn't work. It's like, well, hang on. If you stop giving something the nutrition it needs, like stop watering a plant, it dies. Obviously, you can't sit there and say, "Oh, see, that soil is no good if you stop watering a damn plant."
Yeah, it's like the
wow.
They had there was a meme going around that some of the conservatives were using, and it was a meme about somebody bitching about Calgary healthcare, right? And then all of a sudden, so somebody shared it, right? They just share this post. People just share this post and say, "Look, they don't have good healthcare. Screw socialism." If you dig into the comments, that guy realizes it a week later, a couple of days later, or something like that, and posts an even longer rant about why Americans are stupid for sharing this, and this is not a platform, and that universal health care, at least he got help. He's like, how many people in America are going to be able to get the same help? He says, I may complain because it took me an extra 20 days in the hospital that I didn't want to be here for, but I could tell you at least I still got treatment. I didn't die from it.
Yeah.
Well, like there's cost sharing plans and things that are really popular right now. My sister actually has a cost sharing healthcare plan with her company. The
That's
costs are
disgusting.
super low, and she's like, "This is so great," But what it is a big social group where everybody gets in and pulls their money, and there's a herd immunity. Essentially, there's a big pile of money that everybody funds in, and it helps grow, it helps cover people's costs who are the healthy people fund the people who are unhealthy. It's socialism. Those types of social programs to help everything. So like, I don't know. It's just it's a really weird argument that we have about this when it comes to like your terms and everything. But I don't know. I one of the things that I always run into. Oh, and I wanted to say, I didn't see anything in any of the Canadian links that we had there, but we have done on this show. In the past, if you want to search in cellar door skeptics and secular alcohol or secular rehab, those words will bring up the article or the show. We had some people from the Detroit area who do secular addiction counseling and things like that. So like one of the things you're going to run into is a lot of times it's going to be an under the radar. You'll be like, oh, this is this addiction treatment facility, and then all of a sudden you'll just be in church, and there are a lot of options. A lot of times they may not be covered in plans because I don't know, they don't get the vote in, or however they set up those plans so that some of those addiction programs, you can find secular ones. You're usually going to have to search around, but I do know that there's a lot of programs that that will openly state, this is not a 12-step religious based program. So you can find it in our community, in the non-belief community. You can actually get in to something that won't make you start thinking about Doug Stanhope quotes about vodka being the only higher power. So
I mean, oh, perfect. That's the one. Yeah, because I mean, don't get me wrong. Like we've all heard the jokes about AA's 12 steps being well intentioned, but utterly nonsensical. Because Nikki Payne is a comedian years and years ago, and she was joking about how AA has this very quote unquote helpful pamphlet about different solutions, and she goes, my life's falling apart. I'm single and I can't get laid. I talk with a lisp. Yeah, I want to reach for a Snapple. Right. And that's we could joke about, how people get to addictions, but the underlying issue is that it becomes from a coping mechanism to a dependency issue to an addiction. Right. Now, that's not a professional opinion, so that's very wrong. And call me out if it is, if it's nowhere near accurate as per the model. But we can joke about how it starts, but ultimately it's a very serious and potentially life-ending issue. I mean, as Tanner was saying in his he was telling us about his friend earlier. Now, on my own personal issues, like I went through a phase where I was drinking very heavily. It was my way of dealing with things. And on my 20th birthday, actually, I actually nearly drank myself to death because I woke up, and fortunately, I had put myself in the recovery position when I passed out. So either I fell that way or I just rolled that way in my sleep, and I woke up and I'd almost drowned in my own vomit. And fortunately, I didn't, because I was on my side.
Whoa.
My father, he describes himself as he doesn't describe himself as a former alcoholic. He says he's a recovering alcoholic. He hasn't touched alcohol in over 30 years now, because he scared himself one night so bad because he saw the next morning he'd seen the potential consequences for what had happened the night before, and he said, I haven't touched a drop of alcohol since. Now there
you always want it though. Like my uncle used to talk about it. He quit smoking, and he would talk about it after the holidays or whatever. He'd say, the one thing I really want after a big holiday dinner is a smoke. To load a pipe and have a smoke. Like, it never goes away completely.
Wait, your grandfather was a pipe smoker?
No, my uncle. He was my great uncle. He was my great uncle. Yeah, and he lived in Windsor.
No kidding. Yeah, but, and even me moving away from smoking, like every once in a while, I'm like, oh God, I really could use one.
Yeah, they just show up. Those urges they never completely go away.
Yeah, that's not to compare myself to somebody who has gone through, who is nearly ruined their lives or is in such a state that, they cannot get through the day. Like, don't get me wrong, I'm not trying to equate the two, because there is a vast difference between, somebody who's moved past, because that obviously it's an addiction, but it's not the same problem, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's ultimately the issue.
Yeah, and I think that's the big thing here, right? And you had another article where you talk about looking at, treatment and what's evidence-based versus what's not
Right.
evidence-based. And, that the big thing, to me that we have to have that conversation of is, do you ever get to the point where you're so far gone that what do you do? Like my,
Right.
my buddy, he's at the point where I don't think he can just sober up because I don't think his body would let him. I mean, I don't think he could detox and live through it to some extent. And maybe he can. I don't know. I don't know enough about detoxing, and I've only had some experience with it. I've had friends with heroin problems before and stuff like that, and that's a different detox. But I think it's interesting to look at different, things, and maybe there's a step down program, and it's kind of funny because in Europe, and we'll get to some of the European research here that I looked into in a few minutes, but in Europe, they have different approaches. They have some where they talk about stepping down or reducing the amount versus going completely abstinent, whereas the US is, you're abstinent. You get caught with the DUI, you go abstinent. It's not like you can step down. You're going to quit. They make sure you quit.
Cold turkey.
Yeah, it's going to cost you a fortune if you don't. And I think that's interesting to look at, right? Because if Canada's offering different styles of treatment and they're not using punitive measures to treat a disease, isn't that something that as Americans we should want to adopt? And should we not be asking candidates that we're looking to vote for? What is your position on this?
I think we should. I mean, I definitely think you can put this into the same category as like, is capital punishment, is corporal punishment, is, any kind of eye for an eye, vindictive method.
Absolutism.
Be something. Yeah. Well, I mean, those three things that I just mentioned, we're talking biblical stuff here. You know what I mean? So like,
fire and brimstone.
One of the things that you usually see on this is like, even on the progressive side, you still see a deference towards the morality of the Bible, so-called. And those kinds of morals are really deeply ingrained in the United States, not in the Constitution, but in the collective mindset that they have here. So like the idea of there being some kind of like holding your hand, help you deal with something that's really difficult. It's usually not something that we think of as like as a sign of weakness or something. I really don't know why it's so hard. Hard, tough love that we use in a lot of different systems in the United States, but that really does seem like what it would be. Like I can imagine people seeing like the perspective of like helping people get off of heroin and stuff like that is going to be using some of the other opioids that they have that you can use to essentially you are using an opioid to help you get off an opioid, or you're using an opium based product. So like those kinds of things in some states, you're not allowed to use these it's like a nicotine patch or whatever, where you're getting small amounts to help you break the addiction. All those kinds of things, like they're scientifically accepted as far as like a slow step down, help your body. But when you ask people about that, you usually don't get that as a natural response. I don't think in the US, I don't think that's something that people see would immediately come out with. And so like in Europe, maybe they have a little bit more acceptance towards like working down the system along those lines, and maybe also within Canada possibly. But like I don't think the US would think of that as like a good thing, like using a step down, especially using a drug to help you get off a drug. That's just
well,
I see Gruff, what is it, Gruff McGruff or whatever, just coming in like a bite out of it, just
take a bite out of crime.
Yeah,
we even got like, that in Canada.
In the it's just like we don't do empathy well here, and it's a weird trait to this country, and it's unfortunate. I mean, it might be one of the reasons why we've been so good at being like a world economic superpower, because you kind of need to be slightly sociopathic to just amass wealth on the scale that the United States have done, like just to trample people and take their resources from all over the world. That also kind of appears in our assistive programs through healthcare and everything. I don't know. Do you know if it? Do they use any of the step down systems like Chris mentioned in Canada at all? Have you ever seen
that? I'm not 100% sure.
Yes.
That's why I included
They
the
show up.
McLean's.
Yeah.
But what I actually just added to the notes, there was a conversation that the whole step down as opposed to, have to be completely quitting whatever, reminded me of a conversation. So anybody who's watched the new Netflix version of Queer Eye, Jonathan Van Ness, who's one of the guys, is my absolute bae crush. He had, they run a podcast called Getting Curious with Jonathan Van Ness, and basically what it is every episode Jonathan brings on somebody who's an expert in their field, and it's not always just pop culture with them. What it is they brought somebody on to talk about like gravitational waves when all of a sudden those came out. Their episode 67, which I've linked, is with Dr. Adi Jaffe. I hope I said his name right. I've listened to the episode a couple of times because my wife and I love this podcast here, and essentially what Dr. Jaffe is talking about is not seeing, or is why are we seeing rehabilitation as an abstinence, with abstinence as the goal, as opposed to, moderation being the goal. And why are we focusing on making people hit rock bottom before they feel that they can change? 'Cause for some people, rock bottom is death. Or they've basically put themselves in such a state that they will never financially recover because they're so deeply in debt, or they're in prison, or any of those things. And then basically, now this is just me editorializing here, is that once people hit those points, then they're vulnerable and they're malleable. It would be my guess anyways for why abstinence is the goal of the American system's rehabilitation.
We don't like the idea of preventative care. It's the idea of like moderating a problem, essentially waiting until it completely until you cannot ignore it any longer. I can see that. I'm sure there are different issues when it comes to the psychology and like the way the mind works and how we make decisions. Essentially removing the ego is definitely something that you'd be looking at when it comes to coming to like a complete, what they like to say, a come to Jesus moment, right? When like getting a job as a door greeter at Walmart, that would be a come to Jesus moment, meaning I need to change my life, whatever. It's like those kinds of things like that could be part of the psychology here, is that they find that if you're not all the way towards the bottom, that you're still going to have enough of an ego there. I can take care of this. I'm in control, whatever. I'm sure there's a ton of research out there that would probably support that, because I know humans are incredibly good at being irrational and bad decision makers. And one of the things that they do is say, I'm in control. So that's probably one of the areas for that like bringing that down. But there could be something to like, there are cases where people may not be so ego driven, where they can actually be helped by having a early intervention system or early support system that could help. I you know what I mean? Like all those levels of the grayscale, there's always somebody who can benefit from something. So having a more widespread and option-driven healthcare system on this type of topic would probably be good. It's like offering everything, and then you can kind of pick a la carte what you need. It would technically be the goal of a modern society, where you have the variety of support and care that everybody who needs something can find something that would help them.
Yeah, and understanding that with moderation, you can. There's so many reduced problems. I mean, I can sit here, I can have a drink, and it's not problematic, even though it's a regular thing. It's just a drink. It's just that's it. Like as Freud was fond of saying, sometimes a cigar is just a cigar, right? So instead of making a great big thing out of it and whatnot, there's moderation, because I don't drink myself to oblivion. When I drink, it's usually one or two, because I've been drunk enough to know that I don't really care to get to that state. I mean, yeah, sure, every once in a while, but the last time I was drunk was my bachelor party, and that was a year and a half ago. And for me, like, I know who I am when I'm drunk, and I don't particularly like that guy. Can be fun and all that, but I know who he is. I know what he gets up to, and I don't necessarily want to be remembered for that. So
Yeah, bad decision making is definitely something that
yeah, that's what we'll call it.
Impulse and willpower is something that is definitely lessened when it comes to drinking a little bit too much. But so the European model, Chris, you had some really good links for some of the stuff that the Europeans are doing as far as their method of treatment.
Yeah, and so here we have where they do compare it to the U.S. and I get it, maybe we shouldn't be doing that right away, but we've spent 40 minutes on this topic almost already. And so it's like, well, why not get into the comparison of it? Because to me, this is the most interesting part of it. And this is what I was trying to get at. I mean, I spent like 3 hours and finally this article showed up. Like, cause every time I kept researching rehab facilities in the EU, there's just not a bunch of, concrete, evidence. They can tell you how to get help, but they don't offer all this like actual research into, well, what brings people to this point. But the reason I drove into this one is because they treat alcoholism differently because they look at it as a disease first, and they don't look at it as a problem that you as an individual has 100% caused, right? They don't sit there. There's not a blame game happening because there's no money to be had in rehab. They don't make money on this.
Yeah.
Which is why I wanted the Canadian perspective, right? Because I wanted to know, in Canada, you guys do things very similarly sometimes,
Yeah, and I just wanted to highlight the point that you made there. I think that's actually a really, really interesting insight into the way the American population approaches healthcare. Is that it's it's a you problem, but I don't have the statistics in front of me. So if anybody wants to argue with me, bring statistics to the table and we'll hash it out there. Is that when you're sitting there and you're playing the blame game with addictions, is that's not gonna result in more recovery? Is when you take a look at it and you provide it, or you give it you approach it with the disease model, basically, you're gonna see more results. Obviously, not every result is going to pan out because with how many hundreds of millions of people you're talking about, everyone's gonna have a subtly different approach to everything or response to various methods of treatment. So it's important to take that into account, but that's why we start with focusing on, how did the individual get there? And then, this isn't something that they're doing. It's something that's happening to them.
Exactly.
Right.
Mm-hmm. Yep. A one size fits all never fits.
Yeah.
It just doesn't. Mm-hmm. It never fits. When it comes to faith-based solutions, when it comes to, the new Atkins diet or whatever, like one
keto.
Size fits
it's
all.
Keto.
Yeah, it's keto. Yeah,
which I know you love, Keith. I think that's your favorite thing.
There's or like the paleo diet. Yay! Like what?
So you'd lose weight too if you had to like track a thing of Haagen-Dazs across the Arctic tundra for 3 days too.
Yeah. Well,
so
on the other thing on that is like it's just there've been recent findings to just do bone analysis on the foods that those people ate, and there's the idea that these like paleo and ketos and all that. It's like it's
the ultimate privilege
and all of that stuff. Yeah. So but there's no one size fits all that has the solution for all of these things, and so that you literally have to have a wide malleable and adjustable scope, and there needs to be a variety of options that will work for some people, and like forcing people into a cookie cutter system where there's this legitimate or where there's very rigid steps that are spelled out for like the thing you have to do because this is the thing that brings you to the next step to get you to closer to your final goal. Like that kind of closed-minded rigidity I never seen as like a thing that's universally helpful. And the Europeans, it looks like they changed their output and their thoughts, like looking at some of the stuff that the Americans probably started giving them, and they've kind of evolved a little bit. Is what it looks like here. That's what I'm seeing.
Yeah, and so what their big thing is, in Europe, the big thing is because alcohol is everywhere, because water is not as readily available as it is in the United States. Like you can get water, and bottled water helps, but it's not. There's a lot. It's a different culture over there. Alcohol is more accepted. You can drink in some countries as early as 16.
Yeah.
So there's a lot. There's a lot of different things that go into it. So for them, alcohol abuse is a lot different. And if you think about it, in America, you're told you can go support a war and get killed and never legally drink in your life.
Yeah.
100%. Right? Can you imagine that? It's just crazy to me.
I know he's not the most popular musician in a lot of our circles, but Alice Cooper wrote a song called 18 and it touches on that.
Mhm.
Literally one of the lines is like, I'm a boy, but I'm a man. I'm 18. And literally the lyrics of the song, you take a look at it, it's talking about how, at 18 you can go die for a cause. You can't vote for the person who's sending you to die, but you can, volunteer or sign up for the service to go die. You can't, have any sort of influence on the world around you, but you're welcome to, suffer for it.
I would say Anti-Flag has a better song than Alice Cooper for the exact same thing, but that's fine. We'll let you have the popularity contest here because Alice Cooper's a shithead. Anyway, let's move past that before we go down the tangent you don't want to go down. I'm not. If you haven't figured out, I don't like Alice Cooper in any way, shape, or form.
I struggle with it. Don't worry.
No, I abhor him. Anyway, so in Europe they have different things. So they have to look at treatment in different ways. And I say, hey, in America they go, well, we only need one way to treat people, and I disagree with that, right? Because we had, I think it was 3 years ago, maybe 4 years ago, and it wasn't about alcohol, but we had somebody on the show that had been turned off by the AA programs, that was a heroin addict that went through the SMART recovery program, which is essentially a humanistic, religion-free based program. And it was amazing. Like, that was like, for them, that was the best thing ever, because they're an atheist. They don't believe in a God. They don't, have any of these inclinations. So they don't want to pray to some higher power to take their addiction away. And for me, that touches home, right? Because for me, that's the same thing. If I became an alcoholic, I would not be able to do that, right? I wouldn't be able to essentially take and make myself go to these AA programs and take them seriously because I don't believe in the God.
Yeah, well, that would be super difficult. The episode is episode number 47, In the Heat of Battle. We had a meeting organizer out of Detroit who runs Smart Recovery on the show. It was yeah. And so if you just search Cellular Skeptic Smart Recovery, it'll bring it up in Google and a variety of places. But that was what I was alluding to earlier, and it's an awesome show. And then another one, when it comes to mental health or whatever, we did there was the woman who did the semicolon movement.
Yep.
She actually ended up taking her life, as far as I remember. And so like it's a never ending thing. Like, a lot of times you go through these programs or whatever, it's just like, oh cool, I went through the program. Like, for people who go through this stuff, like, anything can be a trigger, anything can push you in, anything can start it up, anything can just flash back to whatever. And like, so like these programs are not just like I'm cured, now I can go on with my life. These are a lifetime of, you start this stuff, like, you have to basically concentrate on it for the rest of your life. If your addiction or if your mental health gets to the point where it's that big of a deal. And so like treating these things as kind of like a panacea or a round of antibiotics to help you get off is also an issue that the United States has an issue with. We don't think of healthcare in the long term. We think basically like, is there an inoculation, or is there something we can take to make it go away? And then once it goes away, then we can just be back to normal. I don't think we in this country understand that, healthcare is a lifetime. It's a lifetime situation. It really, like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, the way they treat alcoholism is the same way as they treat drug addiction. Once you are an addict, you're always an addict. And, I won't say that there's issues I've struggled with in the past, addiction-wise, where I, to this day, no, I can't touch that because there's just my life would drastically change, A, but B, I just can't handle it. Like, I know I can't. But I went through some of these, teaching myself how to reduce it, teaching myself how to not, get out of those situations, and learning how to set goals to properly refuse things. And so that's what these they're talking about, is they have behavioral control training where they teach people how to monitor addiction urges, setting goals, looking to properly refuse alcohol. when it comes to an enabler. And I think that goes for all addictions, right? If you're around those people, and it's really hard when they're your good friends,
Yeah.
and that's the funny conversation, not the funny, but the one conversation that came out this weekend is we have not hung out with this individual for quite a while because they have addiction issues. And it's not that we can't drink around them. It's just that they can't control them in our presence. So we had an open conversation with them saying, hey, if you want to hang out more, here's the requirements, which we were never honest before, because it's kind of weird, right? How do you confront somebody you've known for 20 years? It's a really weird thing to say, hey, this is what bothers me about you, and this is what endangers others that are around you. If you can learn to fix that, we can hang out again. And, so
or
like
we can hang out with you, we're just not going to drink, like, or whatever.
Well, I can't have them around my kids or anything, but that's what we committed to. And so that's what we had the conversation. Like, oh, hey, if we go hang out, like maybe we should make this if you're that lonely, let's make this a once a month thing. We can get together, eat pizza. I'll buy the pizza. We'll eat good pizza. Or he's like, he knows how to cook. So it's like between the three of us, we could cook something up. But we can do that. We can watch some movies, listen to some death metal,
Nice.
And then we can be alcohol free, and we were. It's kind of funny because when we left the hospital, we had that conversation, and it's like, well, hey, let's get some alcohol for tonight. And it's like, no, we're not going to do that. And my buddy and I were like, no, we're just not going to do that tonight with you, man. Like, let's just go hang out and watch a movie together. Let's go play a video game together. Let's go do something.
Mm-hmm.
It sucks because none of them like board games like I do. So that's like, to me, that's my addiction outlet right there. Like, hey, you want to get drunk? Just go play a board game with Chris. You'll regret it. You won't get drunk because you'll both be in fist fights. So like, hey, there's, let's just go play a board game, so we can get angry sober at each other. I don't know. And so
we can learn to resent each other in real time.
Exactly. Yeah.
Your pitch is lacking. I'm sensing that it's not getting across.
That's why Tanner is not in sales.
Games. It's so great. We'll fist fight at the end of it. This is why we should definitely do it. Like when I always think like people.
I mean, it depends on your friends.
Like board games. We love board games. We played Monopoly, and I punched my grandma. Like, no,
hey,
you know what I mean?
Hey. She would not have been punched if she did not sit there and hold all the pink 50s. I'm sorry, but Grandma had it coming.
You put a hotel on Park Place, Grandma. It's going to go down.
This is called crime.
Yeah.
In fairness, I don't play Monopoly with very many people because I hate it. I hate Monopoly so much. And it reminds me of capitalism to such an extreme extent. That's probably why I hate it so much. But I just can't stand it because it's like if you get lucky and get a little bit farther ahead, you can just stalemate people until you bully them into selling you property that at stupid costs. Like there's no rebound. Like in every other game, there's always use a mechanic that lets you rebound. I mean, like look at chess. To some extent, chess, there's a rebound. If you go too far, you're gone. But for the most part, chess always has a way to come back. Checkers, man, not so much.
Well, I mean, when you're talking queen, king me's and all that kind of stuff, but still.
Before we go back to the conversation, the serious talk there, Settlers of Catan is the millennials version of Monopoly, and I hate anybody who thinks that Settlers of Catan is a good game.
All right, hold on. We're gonna debate. You just derailed the whole podcast.
You just ruined it. You ruined it right there.
You have no idea. It is nothing like the Monopoly.
We're gonna do like a board game.
Really?
Show,
really?
Right?
So the negotiations of trying to get resources from people is not the same. Exploiting people is not the same. Really?
No. It's simple. I play the game where you either trade with me or you don't trade with me. And I won't offer you a whole bunch of crazy trades. I won't always go 1-for-1, but you don't have to have it. You can go another round. There's a huge difference because the caveat, the difference is that robber. So if you hold on to your resources too long, you're screwed. So for somebody that is trying to be an aggressive negotiator, chances are you're going to get screwed because nobody's going to want to play with you. Like I'll be honest.
So what?
I was an aggressive.
If you're an overly aggressive, just angry negotiator, you won't become president of the United States. Is that what you're telling me?
Well, no, you will if you have enough money.
This is garbage. I did not.
But now you're trying to relate you're trying to relate a board game to the president of the United States, and I'm hoping our system is flawed more than just a simplistic analysis like that, because if it's a simplistic flaw, we have bigger problems. It's not a simplistic flaw. We'll get to that in a little bit. And we're going to move on from the Settlers of Catan. So, Keith, I'm going to concede this the same way as you are going to concede that BoJack is one of the most amazing shows ever. And we're not going to have
disagree.
We're going to not have a conversation. You can't agree to disagree. It doesn't work like that.
I agree to disagree.
So the future board game
viewpoints.
episode that we're gonna have is going to be basically me moderating a debate between Canada
you have
and
no
the
idea.
United States and board
You
games.
have no idea. And if
That's
you
what
ever
it's
watch
gonna
any
be.
South Park episodes, you know Canada never wins. So, I mean, come on, man.
Yeah, and everybody just
let's
blames
be prepared.
Canada.
Let's be prepared for this.
Yeah. So, hey, Chris, was there anything else like the European stuff that you wanted to hit on there? I mean, we what is that? 45, 50 minutes in. Besides,
Yeah,
the
not
full-on
really-
report. Now the actual statistics.
Yeah, these are the actual statistics, and I'm not going to go through the statistics. That's not why I put this on here. I wanted to show everybody that, hey, here's the statistics. What they do is they actually break it down by different sections in Europe, right? And they actually talk about different trends, consumption trends. That's a big one, right? Consumption trends is a big one. They talk about the methods and the studies, and we can, again, we'll move past that. But they actually show trends of like liters of alcohol consumption has gone down, right? So they in a lot of these different areas, certain areas have gone down, certain areas have gone up, right? Your more conservative, restricted areas have gone up.
Yeah.
So and
away the Putin.
Yeah, and then they talk about harm, right? And this is the big one for me right here is is alcohol causing deaths, right? Liver cirrhosis, cancer, death by injury, like kind of like what Keith was saying earlier. And I think this is the most interesting piece here because you can actually look and see where the numbers, where the numbers fall out. So like with men, it's very in between 15 and 34, it's very young or very low. When you hit 35 to 64, it jumps. The percentage jumps, and then over that it jumps even higher. Now, this is where the flaw comes in, right? When you're 65 and older, you have a lot of other health issues. So if you've been drinking since you're 20 or 15 and you're 65 now, you've been drinking, 50 years, and it's going to take a toll on your body, man, no matter what you look.
Well, that's kind of a
at
success story, right? You're 65, 70 years old and you're a boozer. You won. There's no way that you should have made it that far. I mean, when that's cooking. That's cooking pretty heavily. So like basically this report is it's really in depth. It's got a bunch of numbers in it that help basically make a case towards, a variety of things. The conclusion essentially helps you understand the European model, what they do, how they do it, and maybe you can do some comparisons between what the US does and what Europe does. But in the end, I mean, you'll see some areas that are better, some areas that are worse. I think in the US, I have actually heard this, that we have seen consumption go down, but binge drinking go up. And so the millennial and Generation Z, we see that they don't particularly imbibe as much and as consistently, but when they do, it's way more. And so like they binge more, but they just like they didn't, television model, right? And they binge everything as opposed to, being consistently in use. And so that's something that they've been dealing with as far as the American model and the youth is concerned. And it looks like it's relatively similar in Europe as well.
Exactly. And the idea with this, that part of the conversation is to give you, and that's why I was supposed to start with that, and I just screwed up the sequencing of this. But that was the idea that, well, it's all because you didn't like BoJack. That's all.
Don't blame me for your problem.
Threw it all off.
It's an issue, not an ish me. Okay.
It's an issue with you, but the problem here becomes, right, is that if you look at the numbers, it advocates for how do we get to a better healthcare system that allows for it. And look, how many European countries have it? Does it fix the problem? And that's the big thing here, right? Does it fix the problem? The answer is no. It does not fix the problem.
What does not?
Having a better healthcare system. It doesn't fix the problem. But what it does do, this is what it does do, is it gives people a better opportunity to help take care of some of their issues that they have. And the difference is the system advocates for people to help themselves rather than using a punitive force to get them into that boat. Not that you don't have to do that sometimes, but for the most part, it's not as necessary.
It's a quality of life issue then, in all reality. Like it's like Are you essentially being just battered and crushed under, the weight of society, or is society just kind of help you out a little bit? Maybe they're not going to carry you and do everything for you, but you're going to have to work.
Yeah.
It's not going to be
And
easy.
and
But
when we
like
go
they're going to give you a little bit of a head start. I don't think we do
Yeah.
that here.
and when we go to my buddy's scenario, right? He just lost his job again. He's been through a mirage of jobs. He has 2 DUIs. He cannot get his license back right now. He can't afford to get his license back right now. He has obviously an addiction problem. He has a disease that eats him from the inside out. We have depression issues in here, and nothing's free in healthcare for those that don't have insurance. And the jobs he works doesn't always give him insurance. And when we talk about this, you sit here and you take the legs out of somebody. You tell me what's the quickest way to fix that?
Yeah.
Alcohol, right? Or drugs. Either which way.
Well, yeah. I mean, why would you want to sit there completely feeling sorry for yourself when you can indulge in something that at least distracts you enough that, you don't feel like the worst person on the planet. Like, you don't feel like the scuzzy fungus that grows on the underside of dog shit.
All right. Let's be careful.
It just helps you forget some of your issues for a little while. And then you time travel to the morning where you feel worse, you feel terrible, and then you have to deal with some of those situations. Like, there's a cascading effect that happens there. So,
and that's my challenge.
I hope there's a way that we can find a way to kind of, grow that appreciation for just the little bits that some countries do.
Exactly, and that's my challenge, right? When our next topic is 100% talking about who dropped out of the Democratic race and what's going to happen to Bernie. Because
before we move, though, I did want to just highlight one of the links that I provided. Sorry to cut you off there. I just didn't want it to go by the wayside there. I did include a link for any Canadian listeners who they or the loved one are dealing with addiction issues. The link I provided, it's to the site for the Canadian Centre on Substance Use and Addiction. And this website provides all the links and phone numbers for each of the province and territories, their addiction centers and addiction services. There's even a link to a government website about addictions treatments for First Nations and Inuit peoples. So again, my Canadian brethren, peoples, what's up? We got you covered if you or a loved one are going through this. And now I'll let Chris, take the reins again.
Yeah. Well, and I agree with you. And I missed that. I think I missed that earlier. And there's one for the European one in there. And I believe there's one for the American one there as well. So that's the thing. Yeah. If you need help, go get help, right? Let's not do it. You don't have to do this alone. The difference becomes is that at least in European and Canadian countries, you don't have to pay for it. America, you do. So then that's the problem. When we talk about who's going to win, what are they going to do, and we talk about who's just dropped out, for me, the big question becomes is when we look at that issue, what are we going to do for those people? And the problem is we have a lot of addicts in the country, and we have all these different things that are going on, but yet we don't want to help them. And now we have Democratic candidates not working for it. Now, we're going to talk about Elizabeth Warren in a second here, because I think Hannah and I disagree on this one personally, because I'm actually pretty pro Elizabeth Warren right now. I'm pretty high on it. And I'll be honest, we'll release after our who I voted for after, they have the election in Michigan, because I've already pre-voted. Absentee ballot or whatever you want to call it. So I've already taken care of my side. But I have a hard time right now because we're seeing all these delegates drop out, right? And am I sad Amy Klobuchar is going? No. Am I sad Pete Buttigieg is going? No, not in any way, shape, or form. If Elizabeth Warren drops, I will be sad. 100% will be sad. I'm not in Boyce's camp on this one. So him and I had a pretty strong disagreement on that. But that's the thing here, right? Is we talk about the addiction and the healthcare. And who am I going to gravitate towards? I'm going to gravitate towards those that want to offer healthcare to everybody, that don't want to take a centrist minority, that don't want to walk into this building and say, oh, our system's pretty good. It's a little bit better with ACA and we can make it a little bit better than that. That's not me. I'm saying is, where's the revolution? Where's the anarchy here? Like how do we fix this healthcare system because it's broken? This is... we have a Canadian host that's literally sitting here telling us you can go get alcohol addiction treatment for free. You can do this and it won't cost you a thing. In America, it costs you whatever it costs you to get into the facility, and you walk out, you don't get your money back. Or
So even
whoever
if it
paid
doesn't
for
work,
you,
yeah.
you're screwed. Like, you're just screwed, man. And that's the disgusting part of that, which is why I wanted to talk about it tonight, is because it feels so broken. And when it happens to somebody close to you, you want to scream and yell at the world, which is probably why we have podcasts, right? You want to scream and yell and say, hey, who wants to vote for Buttigieg? Who in their right mind doesn't want healthcare for everybody? I don't even get it. It's like a foreign concept to me.
Mm-hmm. Well,
that's
Warren,
my soapbox.
Yeah. So we're basically with Warren and Sanders are the two closest progressives to our camp, and Chris and I have talked about this, and I would bet that Keith is probably in the same boat. That would be the candidate. Those two would probably be closest to your political position. And so Warren has always been a little bit more.
I don't know. He doesn't like BoJack Horseman. He might be a Trump supporter for all I know.
Yeah.
This is the worst betrayal ever.
So Trump, Sanders, or Warren. That's what did Meatloaf say? 2 out of 3 ain't bad. So it's basically what we've got here is, the Warren position has always been a little bit more in the system. So the ending of SLC punk, I realized that I was always a fake ass poser, and I could do more damage if I was inside the system. Warren is more of an inside the system type decision maker. That she's always been that way. She is the policy maker, and everything she's done has been way more pragmatical and realist is when it comes to that kind of thing. Like, she doesn't shoot for the moon as far as a lot of other people. And then Bernie Sanders and a lot of his supporters do. So like that would be the one critique for Bernie, is that like he's shooting for the moon, Warren is shooting, or maybe Bernie's shooting for Mars and Warren is shooting for the moon. She's a little more realistic. It's an obtainable goal that is probably a little bit better when it comes to the people who catching the moderates in the middle ground. I don't know why she is not doing as good as she is. I always in my head imagine the two of them would work in tandem, that whoever wasn't doing the best would support the other. And I don't think it hasn't turned quite out that way, which is kind of unfortunate, because there is a more developing rivalry between the two. I haven't seen Bernie come out so much against or critiquing Elizabeth, but she has to critique Sanders to grow and try to grab some more delegates. And so unfortunately I was hoping that if Warren was higher up and Bernie was down low, I would support Warren more than Bernie in getting the election. So it's whoever between those two would beat Joe Biden. That's basically what I was hoping for.
And that's what we got to look at, right? So on the screen, you could see who's winning the delegate race to be the Democratic presidential candidate. And this was updated. This was updated today. So I'm pulling the most recent data that you can get.
This is South Carolina update.
Yes. Yep. And so when we look at it, so Buttigieg dropped and Klobuchar dropped.
Mm-hmm.
The question becomes is, where do those delegates go? If they all go where Biden's hoping they go, Biden hits the top. And it doesn't matter. If Elizabeth dropped out, it wouldn't matter. She's not going to put Bernie over those two. Really, it's going to be if Pete's supporters split, what happens? And now maybe I'm going to tangent here a little bit again, but here's where the question comes in, right? Because Buttigieg dropping, that's huge. Klobuchar, whatever. There was no question that was happening. She wasn't getting it. She was not getting the responses, and she wasn't being aggressive enough to take over for Biden. It just wasn't going to happen. She's not a progressive enough to pull people from Bernie or Elizabeth. Just not going to happen. But Pete is pulling supporters from Bernie and from Warren. So the question becomes is, does his delegates get redistributed, right? And do they go back to Bernie or Elizabeth, or are they all going to go to Biden because he pledged support?
Mm-hmm.
And that's, to me, that's what's disgusting here. Maybe it's a good thing Boyce isn't on, because I think I've chided Boyce before, about DNC conspiracy. But this is pretty close, man. This is really bothering me, because here we have another a big front runner, right? All of a sudden drop out, and now he's pledging support for the conservative.
Mm-hmm.
It's a conservative.
So Pete Buttigieg is a young politician. He has nowhere to go but up. And this campaign, running as strongly as he has and performing as well as he has, winning a state. Like, who won a state legitimately? He did actually win Iowa. He didn't win the popular vote, but he won the delegate count by 1.
By 2.
Those are really important things that there's no place for Pete Buttigieg to go up. It's not going to be an Obama comparison like he was hoping, but in all reality, like, Pete really, really did perform well as far as what was expected. And so he has nowhere to go but up. And my assumption is that he'll probably find himself in a top cabinet position, or he will, without a doubt, pass the House, and he will be a senator in the very near future. And he will be a career politician. He's going to be here for the long haul. I guarantee it. There's no place this guy is going that's not going to be, a big mover and shaker. I mean, there's no question there. And so my guess is that to appease, the DNC and the system that currently exists, he may have done, he may have jumped on the sword, much like Hillary Clinton did when Obama pretty much won, and she dropped out and gave him full on, so there wasn't a contested convention with basically a complete consensus throughout the DNC that she would be the front runner when it was her turn to run. And so, like, these kinds of things, like a Buttigieg future strategy, is real, and it's probably something that was going on. I guarantee you Biden, Buttigieg, and Klobuchar have all been talking about negotiations and stuff, because they really do see that they need to coalesce the moderate vote. And my guess is that there are some things that are happening there,
and I get that. And I don't know if it angers me that they're talking and making backdoor closed deals, because, I mean, to some extent, that's how businesses run.
Mm-hmm.
But we're sitting here going, what's going to happen? And I get it, and here's why Buttigieg dropped out. And I did not know he didn't pick anybody up in South Carolina. That I didn't know at all.
No, nothing.
And
you hit the 15% or 20% threshold that you have to get a delegate at all in South Carolina.
And so so I get why he dropped out now. Actually, after looking through these numbers, it makes sense why he ended up.
What's 2 more days? What's 2 more days
exactly
for Super Tuesday?
Exactly.
So there's some serious negotiation happened there. So what's 2 more days as far as your campaign's out of money? Okay, whatever. What's 2 more days to see what happened? You spent all that money. Let's see what you get.
Yeah.
But
and you're not
dropping
out.
out.
You have money for 2 days. Mm-hmm. You do. You could even just stop ads if that's what you want to do. You could stop promotion if that's what you want to stop spending money.
You literally could stop, and everything that you put in and all the momentum that you had. So, like, there's no reason to not see what happens on Super Tuesday. Like, there just isn't. And so there's obviously something that's, negotiations, politics. Politic itself is a negotiation between people.
And this is where I get angry right here, because now it's going to look like, hey, these two dropped out. Let's consolidate to Biden. And I just say, well, then why did you fuckers run? Why are you even on here to begin with? Get out. Get out. You're in here. And this is where the capitalism bothers me. And this is where I really agree with Boyce on this. Like, before I've chided him, and I'll admit it, I have chided him more than one time on DNC collusion and all this stuff a couple of years ago. 100%. I is definitely not super on board with extreme DSC collusion and Bernie getting screwed. And I don't want to say this is them screwing Bernie. This is just capitalism screwing up our democracy. That's what this is. That's 100% what this is.
The free market isn't the perfect ideas.
Yeah, well, I mean, in all reality, we're looking at Biden, Buttigieg, and Klobuchar, who are open to taking corporate money. Warren and Sanders, Warren's she basically has not denied or refused support from the PAC the super PAC that she's been getting support from recently. But and other than that, like, she has run her campaign basically non-corporate super PAC and Sanders as well. So, like, there are 2 sides to this story. The Warren one has changed a little bit because she needed the funding, and I mean, she's still in. But like,
and she hasn't changed her positions, man.
And
that's
the thing. Like, well, the Boston Herald or the Boston Globe basically really said that they asked her about it, and they said, "Will you deny it? Will you say I'm not taking their support? They may be supporting me, but I won't do it." The Boston Globe. Warren says she has no choice but to accept super PAC help after group forms to boost her campaign. Like those kinds of things, like where there's a super PAC that is open to taking corporate money and things along those lines. The Sanders campaign literally refuses, that corporate money, and so Warren has made a little bit of an. I'm not saying like she's open completely to like corporate super PACs, but she has changed a little bit for that group, and so.
But if that's what it takes, look, man, until she changes her positions, I'm not worried.
Well, that's what it is. So she hasn't outright denied them, saying I don't want anything from it, but she'll accept their help. It's a little bit of a change from the hard line. But either way, she's still light years ahead of the corporate funding that Biden, Buttigieg, like the Buttigieg wineries with the billionaires. Like it's just that is just. He was schmoozing with the elite. So that's another reason why I honestly think the Buttigieg dropout, like the Klobuchar, who cares in all reality? I mean, she's an entertaining speaker, and she was kind of like a hometown and a homely perspective or personality in this one. She's just kind of down to earth and whatever. But like the Buttigieg thing, like without question, that is a corporate dude. That is big money dude. That is kind of like a Biden underling, and I guarantee he's going to be around for a long time. So he's making a decision that will benefit himself.
Yeah, and the difference is what I'm hoping is that those people wisen up and don't run to the Biden camp just because he endorses them. Right? That seems like blind faith to me, because Buttigieg, in fairness, doesn't fit as close to Biden as he does to, let's say, Warren.
I've seen
in all reality,
Buttigieg supporters have been flocking to Sanders unexpectedly. I think a lot of them we don't like Biden. We think he's too old, or he's too middle, or he's got too many bad things in his past. Like Sanders he's old, but he's been on the right side of history for almost every major vote since he's been in politics. Buttigieg is. He's much more progressive, but I see people seeing where they were looking at him as kind of a place to go besides Sanders. Like I don't like the Sanders crazy, super left wing, like apparently, healthcare for everyone is like a radical thing. And then Biden, they didn't like him because he's been around forever. He has all kind of sketchy things that he's made decisions for, and so they looked at Buttigieg, Warren, Klobuchar, and they saw Buttigieg as kind of the lesser of the evils, and so like he was just kind of a default that people hit to. So I'm thinking that hey, if he's not an option, then people might gravitate more to Sanders or Warren or Biden. It isn't like a guarantee to Biden from the Buttigieg camp.
No, but this is where I hope more for is that they actually go to the Warren camp, because I don't want to see her drop just to concede to Sanders right now. I don't want to see that. I think that's wrong. And I would like to see her get through the next 2 weeks minimum without question.
Well, yeah, so you can at least get the Michigan and Ohio votes in. Those are important.
Yep. And
Those
the Texas vote is very important. Texas is a big one. North Carolina is actually a pretty big one next week or this week.
Tomorrow, Super Tuesday.
Yeah. And so those are the things. And that's my problem here. Huh?
I'm glad she's still in. So we'll at least go through Super Tuesday. Because, I mean, in all reality, Super Tuesday is the actual first real contest of the entire day, the entire election. Yeah. It really is. And so, like, I don't understand why someone would drop out unless they've been promised something really big. You know what I mean?
And the only difference is as long as Pete supporters move towards the Warren or the Sanders camp, I'm good with it. I have a problem with people dismissing Warren so early. Like, I really wish people wouldn't do that, because I don't want this foretold prophecy to show up again, right? I don't want that. I want her to have a contending chance because she has similar ideologies. I think she's a stronger speaker than Sanders is sometimes. And I think she has the ability to not be this one-trick book, right? Mm-hmm. And if you watch the last debate, you can see where she kind of came alive, right? She knew how to counter. She knew how to stab. And yeah, maybe it's a little weird to see her go after Bernie, and that I'll be honest, that's not something I prefer to see. Honestly,
it's a competition. She has to critique him, and there are areas where I personally critique Sanders on some of the things that he says. Yeah. Like sometimes when people ask him a question, and he just essentially gives him a stump speech. Yeah. Quotation. It's like, come on,
he falls off the bandwagon, like when he did when they questioned him about him owning 3 houses. And he like, and it's like,
it's a really simple answer that he basically had an inheritance, and then he has a little a little dirty ass cabin. Like like I had by that default, I had 2 houses because I had a hunting cabin in the north. Like it just those kinds of things. Like you need to be prepared to answer those kinds of questions. Warren is definitely quick on her feet, and Biden has a little bit more. I don't know. He's smoother when it comes to basically being able to answer something. He tells a lot of jokes. In the last debate, he had the entire crowd just like what did they say? People that the very last question was misconceptions that I have more hair than I think I do, or whatever. Like he is capable of being humorous, and Sanders is really not the guy that you typically think of as like being like, personable and funny. Warren kind of hits back and forth. Like she can be kind of abrasive, and then she'll have a moment where it's great. It's like Sanders is known for like a hard pointed takedown. It's like, I wrote the damn bill. That was a really big deal in the first debate. And Biden was kind of stumbling at that point. He has gotten up to speed recently. He's been way more composed, way more smooth when it comes to his debating stuff. And Warren has actually flipped. She was quiet and very composed in the first couple debates, and she realized that she needs to be hardcore. And that's when she does that, she actually has a positive response. And so she is growing in the election. I would love to see her do well. I would hope that whichever one it is, like as long as we can take down the centrists.
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Exactly. And that's the big thing, is how do we get rid of the centrists and ensure that we're not getting to that point, Yeah. I don't know.
It's incredibly frustrating. Like what I had to pull this up because your guys' candidacy for the Democratic Party here is like this huge. It's almost as big as the presidential election.
I actually like it more than general. I like the nomination process better than a general, because people will get more specific and way more intense. Like the general, you have to muddle it down and become more moderate. Like it's mushy, but like the nomination is the real one, because like you have to fight for the party, and then once you have the party, then you can kind of go like, I'm just gonna sort of try to appeal to middle America, and so I like that process way better.
But that we're dealing with like our conservative party, the federal one, they're going through a leadership race, because I don't know if I mentioned that Andrew Scheer, who was at the time of the 2019 federal election, he was leading our conservatives. He had to step down over conflicts because he was using party funds to pay for his kids to go to private school. Yeah. Funny how that works. It's almost like you're not supposed to do things like that. Like that's not what that money's for. But anyways,
that's like 40% of the Trump administration, which is why they've all been fired. You're fired. Yeah. Like, oh, that's like they wouldn't have been fired unless they weren't caught, which is like a weird anachronism when it comes to talking about the United States political system. It's like, I didn't do anything wrong until I got caught, and then someone said I had to resign.
Yeah, exactly. But anyways, like, so we have our conservative candidate thing going on, and like it's definitely nowhere near as big. I mean, it's still in the public sphere. There's still a lot of conversation around it, but it's definitely nowhere near as big as like the federal election. So it's kind of amazing sitting here on the outside looking in, going, you guys do know that you're just this is like you're winning a chance, or you're trying to win the chance
to run
to win. You're trying to win a chance so you can win, and you're not actually doing the distance. It's just like trying to appeal to the most people on your side of the fence to give you that shot at winning. So it's very, very interesting to see what a big deal is made of it, like out on the outside here.
It has grown over the years. It's kind of a double-edged sword. So like, if you think about it, like the American people are way more attuned into politics now than they used to be, because it's no matter where you go, like in your face, like all your social media and stuff. So like, the question is whether or not it's a better thing or not, because we do see polarized, weird, ad-driven messaging all over the place. And so like, whether or not the technology is driving people into pigeonholes, into tribes, into the corners of the internet that support them with their confirmation bias, or if it literally is that more people are actually involved in the political system. I don't know which it is. Like, I really love the idea that everybody is talking and debating and thinking about politics and healthcare and all that kind of stuff. I would rather them talk about that than whatever sports ball team in the area they're fans of. Like,
local sports.
So I mean, you know what I mean? Like, if we're gonna debate something, if we're gonna have arguments about something, I'd rather it be about, you know, the political system than whatever economic or entertainment distraction is the top of the day. But you know,
are you trying to talk smack about my lady Cardi B?
I have to.
I like Cardi B though, so
I actually can't name any of her songs. It was just
all right. Anyway,
all I know is that people keep. I've had people yell at me. Not just like I've had people yell at me for wearing a Detroit Tigers hat in Cleveland. Like, not like scream at me from the street, man. Boop, boop, boop. You know, let me. What's happening right now?
I told you the story about when I was in Wisconsin, right?
About my orange hat.
I told you the story about Wisconsin, right?
No.
I can't believe I didn't tell this story. Maybe it was for Patreons. Maybe I did tell it to you. You were drunk and didn't remember.
Yeah.
Maybe it was before you came back, actually. So
this could be an issue. It's like we're having this, you know, alcoholism healthcare thing. This episode,
all right, it wasn't because you were drunk. Fine, that was a bad joke. I apologize. I agree. I apologize. That was a bad
Tanner.
joke.
Bad Tanner.
So I was in Wisconsin, right? You know, which big Green Bay, you know, home.
Cheeseheads.
And their Green Bay was playing Detroit, right? Now, I'll be honest, I subconsciously did this. I did not do this on purpose. But I'm wearing my Lions, you know, ball cap. And I go to Buffalo Wild Wings because the game's on, right? So I could go get wings. Wings were like 50 cents a piece or something like that. So I could go eat for like $10, drink some beers or whiskey probably. You know, drink a couple of drinks, right? And it's right by the hotel, so I can Uber back. It's not a big deal, you know. So I'm there, and they're playing the game, and this is the funny part, right? Because they're playing the game, and I'm sitting at the bar watching it, you know, and there's all those seats behind you, and all of a sudden, you know, something happens where the Lions did something good, and I'm like, yeah, and I was like, yeah, and I'm like, and I was like, oh crap, I'm in the wrong city, you know, like I put my hands down.
Where you open your mouth and try to catch all the wings that they're throwing at you.
Hey, if they were throwing wings at me, dude, I would have turned around and opened my shirt up and been like, hell yeah, that's lunch tomorrow.
That's the spirit.
It's like the number one link to Wisconsin bukkake scene ever. It's just that one right there. That's your winner.
Barbecue cocky.
Oh my god.
Barbecue.
There goes our rating. Anyway, so you know,
that's not going to register on anybody's explicit tag.
Maybe.
Not even once.
All right.
So anyways,
So to be fair. Anyway, so I'm sitting there and like I got one boo. Well, just one. Nothing big. But then a couple plays later, the Lions throw an interception. And I was like, like this. And everybody goes, yeah, like 100% and like 200% volume. Like the whole bar just lights up.
They turned and looked at you, right?
And I'm sitting here at the bar going, okay, maybe I should get my stuff to go because I feel like I'm going to be killed. Like, what the heck? These people are crazy.
Bob Saget stands up, boo this man.
Yes, exactly. And literally every time something good happened for Detroit, they booed me. And every time something good happened for Green Bay, they cheered.
Like, don't
every
get me
time.
wrong. I'm all for being friendly with that competition, but in the CFL, there's a group of there's one team, and I try not to be overly partisan and hold it against people when they cheer for a certain team. But if you're a Saskatchewan Roughriders fans, I already judge you. I already have a very, very, very low opinion of you as a human being by virtue of cheering for the Saskatchewan Roughriders football team. They are.
Is it like the Letterkenny Irish? Is that what
no,
it's like?
No,
worse?
They're not even. They
don't chirp like them. Is it worse?
No, their
than
chirping's
the
just not that good. They're not good at chirping. They're and I know it's the whole, you know, no true Scotsman thing, whatever, but most of the Riders fans that I've had the misfortune of coming across are the loudest, most obnoxious, most unpleasantly competitive human beings you could ever meet. Like they are the only team that they have more fans in every other city than they do in their own hometown. Like you go to their home, their home state, their home city, and I've spent their colors are green, and I spent a St. Patrick's Day in Saskatchewan, which is the same province that Regina is in. The Saskatchewan Roughriders, their base is in Regina, and I saw 3 Rough Riders jerseys. I see 3 Rough Riders jerseys a day minimum anywhere else in Canada. And then on St. Patrick's Day, it gets even worse. And they're everywhere because it's the only piece of green that they own. And you go to the games, and more than half of the stands are filled with people wearing green jerseys. And it's like, you know, you guys could all go live in Saskatchewan if you want to cheer for the damn team, right? And it would be one thing if the competition was friendly, if people could just be like,
all I know is that I would demand any of those people in those green jerseys, you start rapping some Master P, and I'll give you your Rough Riders. Or no, that was Rough Riders was
DMX.
Yeah, it was DMX, right? Yeah, so like start throwing out some DMX stuff in there. Like you gotta, like they have to have an association or something along those lines for the brand name for one of the biggest hip hoppers of 1991 or whatever the hell it was.
God, was it really that long ago?
Yeah, dude. No, I know it's like 97, 98 or something along those lines, but like I don't know. Do they bark a lot when they're cheering?
No, they wear a lot of hollowed out watermelons.
Oh,
Yeah.
Oh, that's a terrible thing.
Oh yeah.
Right, I don't know. Like apparently in the
heads.
U.S., this XFL thing has been taking off. I don't know. The weird off-brand football was like, hey, let's just participate in concussion.com or whatever. Like I don't know. I find myself finding more and more excuses to just not pay attention to football when it comes to there's a
hockey's so much better.
I don't know, but
Anyway.
as far as concussion ends on that one, but like, so I actually this is something from when we first started out the show, Malcolm Gladwell's Revisionist History. The show itself, like the revisionist history, so people think of like revisionism as like a bad thing. He uses this title, but he actually goes back and talks about things that are bad or not really gone over as deeply as they should have. And the one he has on and the football, the concussion
Commission?
disease. No, I was just trying to remember the
epidemic.
Name. Well, it was like there's the concussion disease that was discovered. The whole Cuba Gooding Jr. movie that was pretty popular. But anyways, the whole point of it is essentially that like it has been statistically proven that like football is a concussion delivering and a brain damaging sport. And so I just find myself just kind of not supporting it in any way, shape, or form, just because whatever, you vote with your dollars, right? And so that's just kind of my perspective on that one. But in the end, I mean, I don't know. I just think of like the Canadian Football League and the XFL and the non-NFL teams. I just
Hey, whoa! You do not dare compare the CFL to the XFL. Ever.
I saw their funny, brightly colored helmets.
Hey, don't you dare, okay? Look, we're Canadians. We're not the most well-known for our artistic talents, okay? I mean, some of us are, and they're great, but that's not the overall Canadian thing, okay?
Well, I'll give you your music all day.
Do I got to get in here and mediate this shit?
No, because the XFL is by Vince McMahon, and the CFL will not be compared to that attention whore.
Which is
to the Donald Trump of wrestling.
Oh, all right. Careful there, buddy. Careful there.
No, that's completely and totally okay to make fun of Donald Trump in any way, shape, or form, and any of his social endeavors, any of his economic.
That's not what
endeavors.
I was stopping. Anyway.
Yeah.
To be fair.
Moving on. I wish I had a word for moving on. So I get that, and I get the hesitancy aspect of it, and all of these other things, and we can sit here and talk about sports even though none of us are really that big of sports fans. So it's kind of like, I don't know. It's a weird discussion, I guess. I like hockey. I will admit that, but not enough that we should even do a podcast about it. So
I would not even be worthwhile for me to do that. I do not know the sports ball enough to know how to talk about it for an hour.
Yeah, I will school you on Catan. We'll have a Catan debate. Maybe we'll have that tonight. I've been drinking, so we might have that tonight after this
board game show in like 9,000.
No, this might be a debate, like a moderated debate where we present our own arguments. And I'm already prepared. By the way, I got notes.
I'll moderate it. And
I'm ready to go right now.
I'm gonna get one of those like clickers for like the movies and stuff. Like stop time. Or maybe I could just pretend to be the lady. I could be the lady from The Weakest Link. You are the weakest link. Goodbye. And then like close off your video or something.
Well, you'd have to have a little bit more knowledge on how to have that power. As of right now, you don't have that, my friend.
Oh, what was the old Snickers commercial? Great googly moogly.
And as we close up the show, there's three things we got to remember before we get to quick saves. First one is that American healthcare sucks ass. You should be voting for a candidate that supports American healthcare. At this current time, there's only two that do.
Yes.
And if you're not voting for one of them, maybe you should contact us and tell us why. Hey, if you want to come on the show, no, we're not going to flick you off. You can come on the show and have a conversation about it with us. I'll be happy to. We'll host you. As long as you don't do it from a car like that one Trump supporter did that one time. That was an awful recording. Anyway.
What?
Oh, we had a debate with, I can't remember the dude's name, but there's some dude in Texas that had a debate. Actually, I should look him up. I should go see him since I'm down there all the time. But he wanted to do an official debate, and he wanted this. There's this whole money bet thing, and it was back last year in May. And anyway, long story short is he did the whole freaking debate from his car.
While he was driving? No,
he was in a parking lot. So he was fine, but he was like, your microphone sucks. There's a bunch of background noise. Like, come on, man. This is not professional, dude.
One of my favorite run-ins, which was like it couldn't have been more perfect. But I've mentioned it multiple times on the show, is that I was driving with my Bernie Sanders stickers on the back of my car, and a guy in a Jeep Cherokee just drove up next to me, screaming and yelling and waving a piece of cardboard that had Sharpie Trump on it, just like just like rage cardboarding me at like 70 miles an hour on the highway, right at the 196 junction in Grand Rapids, where there's always a traffic jam because M37 empties into that mess, all that nastiness. But like, anyways.
Mm-hmm. The other point to remember is that with healthcare, greater healthcare comes greater responsibility. Therefore, we need to find somebody that's going to actually help us move into the next, thing. And then the third thing is if you're sitting around thinking about who you want to vote for, again, look at the healthcare costs, look at where we're going to go, look at what we should not be doing. Let's not dismiss Warren this early. I think Warren's still a heavy contender. Super Tuesday's tomorrow. If you're listening to this tomorrow, which you probably will, because I doubt anybody will listen to this at midnight, you should be thinking, how do we share this with others? And that's the big thing here. Like, I'm not going to ask anybody to go donate to the show. I don't care about that. Share the podcast. Say, hey, give us a rating on iTunes. Share the podcast with somebody. Say, hey, they're talking open and honestly about it. And we're talking about somebody like, I'll be frank, Hannah's always been a Bernie supporter. No questions asked, no contest. I've always been a waffling motherfucker, right? And that's just the way it is. And you're sitting here having, listening to an actual conversation between two people that want the best for the progressive aspect of the party, have a conversation about it. And
I've wanted either a Sanders Warren or Warren Sanders since 2014, and it just so happened that the momentum is with Sanders right now. But I would be completely and totally happy if it was flipped the other way. I really would.
Yeah. And now we're to the point where if Buttigieg supporters are honestly tomorrow going to actually go with Biden, and Klobuchar supporters are going to go with Biden, we have to pick the candidate that's going to be able to beat Biden. We don't get a choice now. There's no longer this choice, which is disgusting to me. Is I don't want to be in that position where my one vote is now going to count that much.
We did it 4 years ago. We voted for Hillary.
Yeah, but this is different. This isn't the primaries. in our
Oh, I know,
primaries, you and I didn't have to worry about that. I mean, there was
but like,
there was not a
everything goes
contender other than
through-
Hillary.
Everything goes through the same way again. Let's say Biden just gets the centrist support, and the delegates all go that way.
We're screwed. We have to vote Biden.
We're gonna
get
vote it. And I honestly don't think that what he's been campaigning on, that like he is the guy that can beat Trump. Like that's the whole point. Is
No,
a centrist.
he can't.
I honestly don't think he can.
And okay, here's and again, I'm going to tangent again, but here, that political compass. So it's funny. There's a gentleman that I used to work with, that's on my Facebook, and he's a Republican. He's a really nice Republican, so I won't mention his name so nobody goes trolls him. But he, he posted the political compass, right? And he posts where his little dot is. And I went and found the one with popular celebrities. He is 2 to the right of Obama, and he critiqued Obama off the charts for years. He has, and I he still has not responded to me. And I posted under an hour after he posted, just to say, by the way, you're only 2 right of Obama. Yeah. And you're nowhere near, you're like 7 off of Trump.
That's where identity politics shows up. Like if you take away all the BS, if you honestly take away all the BS and just put policies in front of people, you would be genuinely surprised at how much Democrats and Republicans actually agree on stuff. But if you take the identity politics and put it back in there, it ruins everything. And it really does. And
that's why I'm so far left. It's not even funny. That's a funny thing. I was like, I won't even post where I show up. If you just so you probably can figure it out. I'm not anywhere near Stein or Nader. I'm nowhere near any of them. I'm gone.
I voted for Nader. I hate everyone.
Yeah. I'm gone.
Yeah.
Anyway,
I'll vote for Nader when the Pinto doesn't start on fire.
Fair enough. As we wrap the show up, though, we have a segment we like to call Quick Saves, and I'm going to let Hannah do his quick save first.
Okay, so quick saves, things that we do, like something that you're browsing through and you see and you're like, oh, and you save it, and then maybe you'll go back to it, maybe not, but like a super awesome thing. And there's a new found kingdom. I don't know if you guys heard about the new kingdom in the Tree of Life, but there is a new. It's neither an animal, plant, fungus, or a familiar protozoan. It's a strange microbe that sits in the known supra kingdom of life, and it doesn't fit anything. It doesn't consume oxygen as a way in which to breathe. This new thing is it's called a. I'm going to give this a shot here. It's a hemimastigote. It's in a clump of Nova Scotian soil. There's subsequent analysis of its DNA revealed that it was neither animal, plant, fungus, nor any recognized type of protozoan. So, in fact, it fell far outside any of the known categories for classifying complex life forms, eukaryotes. And so, this particular little critter is now a brand new type of life form that has never been seen ever on Earth. It's microscopic. It's super small. It's super cool because why not? Right? It has a flagellum, which is one of those things that the anti-evolutionists love to source as a method of propulsion that non-reductive complexity. So you cannot reduce it any further. All those types of things. This is just a cool thing. I really enjoyed reading about, and the people that have discovered this, obviously this is early on. They're going to be talking about all of the analysis as far as these types of complex cellular structures. It's like it needs to be more than just like a single cell creature, as far as I understand. But when it comes to it, it's just these hemimastigotes. They represent a handful of Rumsfeldian known unknowns is one of the quotations from the article. So the Rumsfeldian thing was just like the known knowns, known unknowns, unknown knowns, and unknown unknowns. For anyone who really wants to go into logics of strategery from the George W.
It's a very heavy book save.
Yeah. So other than that, it's a really cool read. So check it out.
So would you say that life found a way?
That what?
Tanner got it. It's Jeff Goldblum from Jurassic Park. Life finds a way.
No,
and now that I explained it, nobody's laughing. So thanks.
Yeah, that wasn't a joke or a punchline. That was a deaf kid didn't hear words moment there, because like I have one hearing aid working as far as the connectivity on here, and so I'm basically in mono, not stereo. It's kind of hard to hear Canadians.
Hey, that's a good
That's
one.
our word.
That's a good one. Oh, anyway, my quick save as we close the show out is a lot less in depth than Hannah's. So, essentially, Japan has created the ultimate gaming bed, so you never
Yes.
have to rejoin
That's
society
Japanese.
again. And so,
Is
I'm
the
very
taco
sorry,
sleeping?
Hannah. The guy
What-
looks like he's sleeping. He looks like he's sitting up. He has a big monitor in front of him. It is the most amazing setup I've ever seen in my life. It allows for you to have cup of noodles right by your bed. You can hold your controller, your headphones, everything. It's amazing. And
You camera on your life. Holy shit.
yeah, he has, two screens, everything. Like, I'm not saying I want to live my life that way, but I would not be opposed to having a bigger bed that I could sleep on that had half of it like this, and the wife could have the other half, for whatever she does. And that way I could lay in bed at night and play my video games if I want to, versus having to sit on my couch. It would free up a living room space in my house, right? And it would make it more to play Settlers of Catan to beat Keith every single time, because that's how this is going to work, is he's never going to win this game against me. And I'll play you online. We're going to do this. I'm challenging you. We're done.
We can play this online?
Man.
Before
Yeah,
this
I
turns
haven't-
into something too intense, I honestly have to say that I'm worried about Hikikomori and Tanner. So, like, seriously, have you ever heard of Hikikomori?
No.
Okay, so this bed and this entire system is something that there are over 1 million people who have a hikikomori in Japan, which is essentially they have removed themselves from society and they don't interact with anyone. All they do is play video games and watch hentai and whatever it is that they do. It's
material.
it's a major adolescent problem, and that bed there is like a symptom of this.
I disagree with you. All right, we're gonna keep moving
man.
on because you're dragging the show down, buddy, and that's not how this is gonna work. So, I disagree with you. I think that bed is amazing. I will say that yes, it could be an enabler if you have an addiction problem. But we had how many addiction links tonight that we could send you, and that's
Yeah.
where we'd be.
I don't know if there's a support system for hikikomori, but
Oh my God.
There always is for
They
addiction.
have some amazing systems on here. Like there's a recliner. They have a tent. I'm sorry, a tent.
Yep. It's like Parks and Rec all over again. Anyway, thank you all so much for joining us tonight. If you would like, you can go over and support the show on Patreon. You can also help support the show by sharing it and telling others about us. Thank you all so much. Have a great night. We'll see you next week with another amazing episode of Cellar Door Skeptics.
Bye.
who's clicking?
I don't know, but you keep showing up. You didn't mute yourself, so everybody heard about the clicking.